of course, we're meeting during really challenging times right now in the lives of many people, particularly Klal Yisrael, and how deeply everyone is affected. Just kind of, I am on many mental health WhatsApp chats, and the whole day is just bombarded with discussion about where people could get resources for anxiety, stress, struggle with sleeping, struggles with just being able to be functional in day-to-day life. And it's amazing how even the therapists are seeking these services. It's just nobody is immune from what is taking place right now in the world. And of course, life must go on. And I'd like to preface with amazing insight from the Chafetz Chaim. A question was posed to him. There were families who did not want their sons to date. And this is, we're talking about 1850s, 1860s, 1870s, because during the Russian Empire, the Tsar would conscript into army everyone, including Jewish boys. And so there was a fear, if you go to the army, you might never come back. And so there were people who stopped making shidduchim for their children. And the question was posed to Chafetz Chaim, what is the proper approach during these times? And the Chafetz Chaim brought as a proof story of Miriam and her father Amram in Egypt and said, absolutely, you must date. There's a mitzvah in the Torah for a root of a family. And there's a famous concept of B'chadakav Shidduch Malach. We don't ask questions about what Hashem is doing in Shemayim. We were given the Torah and the mitzvahs, and our job is to move forward and to have families. And so we're sitting here today to discuss this really fascinating topic of, well, what should I be doing? I'm single. I'm really stressed out what's going on in Eretz Israel. I'm wondering what's going to happen with my family, friends, whether they're serving directly on the front lines or in some other way, close to the borders, wherever they may be. And people are struggling. People are asking these questions, according to where they are in their stages of life. And so I'm really excited to have this opportunity to talk to both of you about what should be people's mindsets, what should be their approaches to going through this process, particularly in a stressful situation such as now. So maybe we could just start just very generally, and maybe if you both want to share either what you're already hearing from the singles you're interacting with, or a general advice you're giving in terms of what is the healthy mindset, what is the right way to approach dating during these very troubling times.
I'm going to jump in if that's okay. So yes, this is definitely number one question on everyone's mind. Do I date? How do I date if I do? Do I keep it solemn, boring, uneventful? I feel guilty. I feel so guilty. People are, dying in our Yisrael. People are scared. People are unsafe. How could I be enjoying dating? So something that works very well for me when I'm feeling a lot of stress and anxiety over this topic, as most of us are, is to try to take that stress and anxiety and turn it outward as opposed to inward. And so what I mean by that is that there's a tendency to, depressed, anxious, stressed out, loss of sleep, cry. None of those things are actually helping to move us forward in the bigger picture. Imagine if our army, if all of our soldiers were depressed, crying, and paralyzed in fear and pain in their beds, we would not be able to fight a war. And so the videos that we see are the soldiers dancing and singing and being besimcha and eating together and laughing because they need to keep those spirits up. They need to keep the morale high. Otherwise, they won't be able to fight. And as I read somewhere, this isn't just a war of guns. It's a war of the mind. We are so in control of our mind, even when we're in control of nothing else. And so what works for me is instead of turning that pain and stress inwards and just feeling and absorbing that pain and being, just kind of paralyzed in pain, to be able to turn it outwards and say, what can I do to help the Jewish people, to help everyone move forward? And for me personally, what I can do is to encourage people to date, because we have lost so many beautiful homes in Klal Yisrael. And so now our job and my job is to help rebuild as many as we possibly can. And that means not being paralyzed in fear, not being, caught in despair and depression and anxiety. That is not going to help us date. That's not going to help us keep our spirits high. That is not going to help us get married. And that's not going to help us rebuild Klal Yisrael. And that's really what we need to do. We need to face our enemies by saying, you will not destroy us and we will rebuild. And so that is what works well for me. It gives me inspiration when I'm able to see that with that stress and pain and anxiety of everything that everyone's going through, we can really have an impact by helping couples come together, And something that I've seen is even when couples are going through their individual pain while they're dating, sharing it with another person is very helpful. So I'll tell couples, go out, discuss it, have conversations about what's going on. Don't avoid the elephant in the room. That is a great topic. Share your pain. And when we're vulnerable and we share our pain, that brings people together. So I found that in the past, whatever it is, less than 2 weeks, being able to just drop the facade of who I pretend to be or who I posture to be and get real with real issues. People are being very open, very vulnerable. It's creating a lot of connection. And it's also forcing people to realize what is really important. Is it really important that he went to this yeshiva or he wears that hat or he wears that color shirt? Or, I had in mind that he should be 6'2" and he's only 6 feet, right? Or is it more important that we have a deep connection? We know our values. Family is what's important. Rebuilding Klal Yisrael is what's really important. Being focused on who I am as a person and who I want to become and how much better I can make myself through these times is what's important. And if I share those common goals and values, you'd be surprised how much further dating can go than when we get stuck on the minutia. Eretz Yisrael, I'm not going to go into this, but as we all know, was very, very divided before this happened. And everyone was very caught up in all of their differences. And now, since the attack, all we can focus on is our similarities and what brings us together and the achdus and the love that we can share. And I think that actually is a tremendous message for dating, because how many more relationships can we build when we don't get stuck on the minutia and the insignificant and the unimportant, and we focus on the big picture of goals, of values, of Klal Yisrael, of building home, family, children, seeing the good in another person. I think that is the most important message, at least for me, that I take away from this and what I can do to contribute. And obviously we all contribute in different ways, but I'm very, very pro everyone trying to get out there and date and rebuild as many families in Klal Yisrael as we can.
Ms. Elin, do you want anything to this?
Sure. I think that this time is very startling, and I think that a lot of people are uncomfortable. I know myself that from my own personal experience, going day to day through the regular schedule of daily activities, family, yantif, Shabbosim, plans of going away for Shabbos, if it's somebody's birthday, taking them out to eat, or there's a lot of discomfort that's coming into place right now where people are having a confusion in their mind. Am I allowed to be happy? Or should I be sad? Or how do I balance everything? Because we really want to be balanced. We want to move forward correctly. And I think that there's a few answers to understanding this discomfort. Number one is everyone's uncomfortable right now. I have a really good friend. She's a principal and she is like dynamite. She knows how to take children, parents, anyone she comes into contact with, her staff. And she has a really great saying. She says, get comfortable getting uncomfortable. Now, nobody likes discomfort. Discomfort is, it's different. It's not smooth. Wearing your sock with the line in the wrong spot and you're like, sensory issues. Oh my gosh, But the truth is, we know from Rabbi Dr. Avraham J. Twersky has a video clip on the lobster and about how the lobster, as he grows, he needs to shed his shell because it gets very tight on him. So what he does is he sheds his outer shell and then hides inside some rocks until he's strong enough to develop a new outer shell in his new body size, which is now greater and larger than it once was. And he said, had he gone to a doctor, perhaps the doctor would have prescribed him some medication for his discomfort, and he would never be able to go through the process of the development in order to become bigger, greater, and stronger. Let's start getting comfortable being uncomfortable. We need to recognize that there's a lot of growth and a lot of change. As we've been experiencing in the past few years, life is going to be different, moving forward with these previous experiences that we've had going on in this world. But it's part of a growth and a development. Now, that being said, we have a lot of people that don't realize that they are not alone. I actually had somebody called me up for a coaching session last week, and he just said, I'm just down. My spirits are down. I don't feel good. I feel like I'm doing something wrong by dating, but after a whole day of work and then getting ready and then driving an hour and a half to the girl, and then I see her, it's like, I'm feeling uncomfortable. I feel wrong. I feel like, am I supposed to be doing this? So to that, I answered him 2 things. Number one, you are not alone. You are not the only person going through this. So I'm happy that you're reaching out for support and to have a voice so you don't suppress these feelings and eventually feel like, why am I so overwhelmed? He said, why should I be? He said, but Mrs. Elin, why should I be overwhelmed? I have my job, I have my family, right? Shouldn't I be okay? And I said, are you okay? And he said, no, my spirits are it's really hard. And I said, and that's okay. Kal Yisrael Arevim Zalazeh. We all love each other like our own. We're all one and the same. Obviously, clearly, it's going to be hard on you. If you didn't have any feelings of sadness going on, I would be very concerned that you're like, woohoo, getting ready for another date. Oh yeah, here we go, driving out there, really excited. It's sort of like, where's your heart? At the same time, Hashem doesn't expect you to be in mourning, even though they're like our brothers and sisters, right? And we're going through it with them, not alone. You have strangers showing up to Levayas. You have strangers showing up to Shiva homes. And they're like, I'm not a stranger. I'm your brother. I'm your sister, right? This is a loss for all of us. And that's the power of Klal Yisrael, and it's true. But like you said before, there's guidelines, and we need to follow the guidelines. And the Torah has the guidelines. It's a blueprint that's laid out perfectly for us. We had many years ago in Waterbury, Connecticut, for those who remember, we had a very bad blackout and we lost power and everything. The yeshivas were set up in New York and here and there. And we had Bachrim that were in an accident. And unfortunately, they were on their way back to yeshiva, coming back home to the yeshiva grounds. And we lost two of our Bachrim. And it was very hard on the community, and it was very hard on the families, much more so. As a community, we didn't know what to do. And the Rosh Hashiva, Rav Aaron Kaufman, called together a gathering for all the women. And he said the following words, which were fascinating. And actually, really, I hope this is going to help everybody in life as much as it was able to help us here. Rabbi Kaufman said that he spoke about the milas of these boys, and then he went on to what are we supposed to do with all this information? Very hard, very overwhelming. He said a Bachar went over to him and said, Rebbe, I have a chasna tonight, and I just can't go. I'm too sad. I can't go. And he said, you have an achrayis to go to the chasna. He said, but how could I go if I feel this way? So the power of a yid is fascinating. The power of a yid is to be able to hold onto two seemingly opposite feelings and emotions simultaneously at the same time. I'm allowed to be happy and sad at the same time. We say Shema Kolenu. We scream out to Hashem for help. We say Rifa'enu Hashem. We need you to heal, right? And then we say Modim Anachnu Lach. Hashem, you are everything. You are. This is so interesting. Two seemingly opposite emotions going on simultaneously. The message that I could give over to help people is that being uncomfortable, feeling like something else is going on that's hitting your level of your happiness, that's okay. Of course, you're human, you have feelings, and you're not alone. And a little secret, tons of people are going through this, especially in the dating field. That's number one, and it's okay. And you're allowed to be sad, and you're allowed to say, okay, and now when I go on the date, I'm going to turn on my, I'm going to get into the mood of the focus on the dating.
Even your date is feeling the same thing.
It's really true. It really, really is true. But two things I do want to say. Number one is that my son in yeshiva said the following. We said, how's yeshiva going? We have a son that we sent back. He's in a yeshiva out of town in a masifta. And he said, oh, it feels like Elul. So innocently, we responded, oh, because you're coming home in 4 weeks? Like does mom's not? He said, no, just everyone's really a little more serious. Like everyone's on their best behavior. It's sort of like no one's really their like, chilled back, typical self. It's just, so that's number one. It's a very, very, very normal, normal thing. And the second thing that I wanted to say is that having this understanding of what's going on, we need to understand that not only is there a mitzvah, to build homes, and not only is there an understanding that the Torah is the perfect blueprint for us with the guidelines of when we're supposed to mourn and when we're supposed to be happy, right? Eish shalom ve'eish malchama. Like all we need to know that there's a time and a place for everything in this world. So to this I say the following: for everything that's happening in Eretz Yisrael, for the amount of homes that they broke, we are completely determined to build homes. Go out there, go date, go continue, if you find your zivug, get engaged, get married, and continue to build bayis ne'eman b'simcha, because this is the antidote to everything going on. The spirits are strong. The spirits are great. If the chayalim and all the videos that we're watching can be devastated and sad and super, super, super happy at the same time. I spoke to a bacher who was in the middle of dating a girl who I set him up with, and he had to leave because he was in the reserves, because he was the head of a unit not so long ago. And he had to leave America, and he went back to Eretz Yisrael in the middle of dating a girl. And we don't know when they'll be able to pick it up again. But I want to tell you what he said. He said, he called me from where he was located with his current unit. And he said, we are going to win. We know we are going to win. The issue isn't if we're going to win. We know we're going to win. And that positivity, if he at Sahal, in places that we can't even begin to comprehend or understand what he is, the conditions of what he's going through, if he could say that, we could be okay. We could say we must have that same spirit like he has. I might not have that spirit internally, but you know what? Yes, he has that spirit. Let's have that spirit also.
I'm just processing. You said so many things that like really. Again, you could make fun of me for being the therapist in the room. I need to process. I constantly need to process. Even this such amazing idea of saying to yourself, "Wait, what I'm experiencing right now, that's actually normal." Just to even make peace with that idea. It's normal that I'm experiencing this. The challenge is that when we live in times of peace, and on top of that, we live in times of comfort, such as living, in the Western world, we're just not, we're not trained, equipped, conditioned to absorb such a drastic change in our external environment. There's a reason why they call these things adjustment disorders, because we're struggling adjusting. And especially to something like war. War is a massive adjustment. It's a massive trauma. And when everything is comfortable and I'm just used to my, relatively smooth flowing life, to all of a sudden be thinking, hearing, seeing that, death is just very, very deeply unsettling. But I think that you're right, that is definitely the calling, especially for Jewish people to live while holding both of those ideas. I was actually listening to a shir last week from my Rabbi Gershfeld, was uh, saying in the name of Rabbi Sol Salanter that people very commonly, try to offer explanation of with what attitude did Avram go up to bring up his son Yitzchak. And one opinion will say he was going basilka, right? Probably like a Hasidic type of a pshat. Another one is saying no, he was going depressed, maybe Litvish pshat. And and he says, and no, he said there's a measure that says, excuse me, there's a measure that says while he was walking, there was a tear going down his eye and a determination in his hand, and he was holding both feelings because Hashem wants us to serve Him with all of these emotions, with all of these things we're experiencing right now. And I find that this is what's very much missing for people as they're going through these mindsets. The feelings you feel, God gave those for a reason. We
That's
have
right.
this artillery of mixed emotions that is sitting there waiting to be activated, right? The only question is are we going to be in charge and we'll decide where these emotions should go? Or are they going to sort of take us captives and all of a sudden, right, these waves of overwhelming emotions and people like sharing, at least when they share with me, just almost like out of control experience, it becomes really important to be able to sort of take the time to pause, process the feelings, and then reframe back into one, this is normal. It's okay to be going through this. A lot of people are going through this. And then two is this is not the way we're supposed to express, serve Hashem. We're supposed to serve Him with all the emotions we were given, and taking the time to cry is part of serving Hashem, and taking the time to laugh is part of serving Hashem. One doesn't take away from the other. One doesn't minimize or reduce significance of the other. It's just being able to pause and say, this is the human experience, to experience all range of these emotions and to be able to, with our minds, to use the seichel and das to know how to direct which emotion at which point.
Right. So it's actually fascinating because to bring this full circle, Rachel said that it's important that in terms of your feelings and your voice, to let it be outwards and not inwards. So to take that to the next level, that explains that when there is that discomfort, right, from within, we have to be able to identify it, come to a peace with it, and allow it to surface. It has to rise to the surface. So what does that mean? So I have an understanding from Rav Leichter, one of the mashgichim at near Yerushalayim. Rav Leichter came and spoke in our community one time when there was somebody who was very sick, and it was a very scary time, and it hit the whole community. For those of you that are not familiar, Waterbury, Connecticut is a community. It's about 20-something years old, but nonetheless, it's still a small community where almost everybody knows each other. So he came and he spoke, and he said something fascinating. He said that a lot of times when hardship strikes, Baruch Hashem, as a community, everyone comes together, take upon different takanos and different yanim to do as a unit. He said, but what's also important is to listen to yourself and to see, where does it talk to me? What about my neshama? And what does my neshama have to do to be metaking what it's feeling right now? So he said, for example, it was very humorous. He said, does it talk to me in my arm? Does it talk to me on my side? Does it talk to me in my leg? And his point was, pay attention to where what this person is going through, this hardship that this woman is going through right now, where does it talk to you? And for one person, a response could be, she wants to have an ayin taiv on everything. Somebody else might choose shmiras halashon. Somebody else might choose tefillah. Someone else might choose emunah. Someone else might choose to be more careful in terms of their meiser and tzedakah. Someone else might choose to call their parents more often. Someone else might choose to do something very out of their comfort as a chesed because they really want to make some sort of carbon as a chesed for this person. If we would start recognizing that not only is it okay to have a voice, but the intention is to have a voice. The intention is to say, where is this talking to me? What's going on in Eretz Yisrael? How am I going to connect? How am I going to be a person who grew from this? Who, yes, right now I'm vulnerable. Yes, right now I don't feel good. Yes, right now my shell has been shed. What am I going to do so that I can come out as a person who's developed as a chus for Klal Yisrael and for everybody? And I think that this really connects strongly to dating because in terms of being open, being outward, being vulnerable, allowing yourself to connect with another person, I think there's a lot to add on this. And Rachel, I'd love for you to expand on this concept.
So yeah, I love this. I love this idea you're bringing up, and I want to focus on the getting out of our comfort zone area. And me being just a practical brain, I always kind of bring things back to, practical application. That's just kind of how my mind always works. What can we do in dating during these times? Because yes, we are dating. Yes, we're going out there. What can we do to enhance the way we date, be more focused and efficient in the way we date, and get outside of our comfort zone? I'd love to just talk about a few examples of what we can practically do to get outside of our comfort zone. So I think we all have those switches in our brain when we go out and I meet somebody, and nobody talks about it, but we all have this switch where I go out and I see him or her, and all of a sudden I'm like, no, not my look, not my personality, not my hashkafa, just not me. It's not my type, not for me, right? And so we politely smile on the date, and we sit there and we do our due diligence, look at the time, okay, how long do I have to sit here to call this an appropriate menstrual date? Okay, 2 hours and 1 minute. I'll sit there, I'll smile, I'll behave myself, right? But then I'm out of there because you know why? In those first 5 seconds or that first 5 minute conversation, the switch was shut off. I am not interested. This is not for me. And I'm done. So physically, I'm sitting there on the date, mentally, emotionally checked out. What if in a way in which to get comfortable with the uncomfortable, we were able to say to ourselves, I'm sitting on this date anyway. I'm sitting in front of a bas Torah, a ben Torah. what if I just by chance decided to keep the switch on? What if I just by chance, I have to sit there anyway, right? I'm going to be here anyway. I got nowhere to go. I can't just in 5 minutes say, hi, you're not my look, got to go. Can't do that, right? That's rude. So what if I pushed myself to keep that internal switch on and say, I'm just going to be open. I'm just going to get to know this person. I'm just going to say, is there anything about this person that I could really respect, that I could be inspired by, that I can connect to? What if I did that? And I'm not even telling anyone that you have to commit to a second date, because you've already switched off that switch, and in your mind, there is no second date. But what if I just allowed that switch to stay on, to be open? What could happen if I'm sitting there anyway? What could happen in terms of how I can connect to someone, what good I can see in someone, what good they could see in me? And what if they did the same thing? How much could come of that, where we're actually staying
what's
open?
the answer? But what if somebody really is checked out and they don't want to see them?
I understand. Again, we can't control someone else.
What is the answer? What is the answer to how the internal switch, like you just said, what if, let's say, one side did keep that internal switch on, and what if the other side also kept that internal switch on? So can you speak about the benefits of it? And is there any chance that they can or cannot be for each other? Or what are other benefits by them allowing themselves to have that switch on?
Sure. So first of all, everyone always asks me, how do I take my relationship from second or third date to bringing it to the next level, Everyone wants to be bringing it to the next level. Nobody knows how to do that. And one of the major answers to that is connection. When I feel like I connect to somebody deeply, when I'm able to make myself vulnerable, open up, and share things that are more personal to me, then I show you I'm allowing myself to be exclusive in this conversation to you. I'm being vulnerable in a way that I am not with other people. That makes another person feel special, wanted. Wow, they want to share this with me. And that allows connection to build. And when the other person does that for you, that really brings the relationship to the next level. So what I'm offering here is, what if, even if you think this person is not for you, if I'm able to keep that switch on of saying, I'm going to stay open, I'm not going to shut off the switch, I'm not going to shut off my mind and say, this is not for me, I'm not continuing, I'm going to say no, how long do I have to sit here till I get out of here? Because by the way, a person can feel that energy when you shut off that switch, even though you don't verbalize it. I can tell when you're staring at out the window, when you're looking at your watch, when you're just kind of watching the passersby. Okay, you go to the bathroom 3-4 times. I get it, you don't want to be here. Okay, and so that does not lend itself to connection, or even the possibility of seeing if there could be connection. But what if we started to open up and talk about, what we're going through, our pain of Eretz Yisrael, and the stress and the anxiety, or the family, or the soldier we know, or the people we're davening for, or the things we're working on within ourselves, right? All these things are things that universally everyone's going through right now. And if we can pick one area where we can choose to connect on, and frankly, Eretz Yisrael is a great one, because it's personal, but it's not too personal, because we're all going through it. It's not like, oh, this one's parents got divorced, and oh, I had a sibling who passed away, and I have a special needs. These are not extra personal. It's kind of universally personal, because we're all going through it. So if we're able to go through it together and try to see if we can connect on that, that could be like the Pesach, the opening for further connection. And so even if one side is keeping that switch off, right? I'm open, I'm going into this date open, and I can tell that he's not open at all. But I have to tell you, even when that other person is not going in open, and you are keeping your switch on, you're like, I'm going to stay open, I'm going to be present, I'm going to really try to engage. It'll take a little bit of time, but you'd be surprised people will come around. It's like, okay, how long do I have to sit here? And then she or he is going on. It's like, wow, this is a genuine person. They're actually putting an effort into this conversation. They're actually opening up. They're actually sharing and being vulnerable. I think it would be nice if I would also contribute. So you can sometimes bring that person in by leading by example and showing them that I'm going to be vulnerable first. Okay, it's always hard, who's going to be the first one. But if the person who's conscious of keeping that switch on is going to be able to be vulnerable first, you can gently invite the other person into the conversation just by your openness and your warmness, right? How often do we go on a date and we're in a bad mood, but the person we're with is so smiley and happy and positive? We feel awkward being in a bad mood because they just have this positive effect on us, right? So you can have that positive effect on another person, even if they're shut off. And I think that is a really, really great way to be able to build connection. And especially with something like the whole Matzav in Eretz Yisrael, which is personal, but not too personal, to try to use this as a stepping stone to vulnerability, to connection, to openness, to getting real. there's so much good that can come in connection from getting into real conversations, right? The things that I don't want to go out with someone for, because, he has this job and not that job, because I heard that he wears this clothing and this color, not that color, this yeshiva, not that yeshiva, this height, this weight, right? When we can get away from the superficial and just dive deep into who this human being is that is sitting in front of us, there is so much greater potential for connection and to be able to see what is actually going on here in the relationship. There are so many couples who go out, once or twice, they say no. And then 5-10 years later, it comes back around and they get married. What happened? Like, what happened that first time? I'll tell you what happened. Connection was always available. Both or one switches were off in both of them. And so there was no even chance. You couldn't start the conversation of trying to get to know this person. Once they went out another time, years later, they were more mature. They were more open. They were saying, I'm going to get real. I'm not going to focus on the superficial or that one thing I heard about them that I didn't like. Then there is so much potential that could come. So I think that that's a really great place to start.
I really like that, because there's two really big benefits of when people are open that I love, to expand on what you said, Rachel. One is that, I've had people that have gone out, many times. I tend to not count dates out of all the shidduchim that I've made and continued to do work with. I still never know how many dates they went on. It doesn't matter to me. I don't count dates. Some people do. I don't think that a 5th date means this and the 7th date means that. And by the 12th date, you should get engaged. It's not how I roll at all. It's much more individual based. However, what I have found is that by people holding in, or not turning their switch on, until they get really, really, really comfortable, which is usually at a later time where they became very familiar with the person who they're dating, but they were never personal. They find out at a later stage that it's not going to work. And when I say stage, I don't mean that they entered from that stage 1 to that stage 2, from the hi, nice to get to know you to better conversation and more emotionally connected. I'm saying that they have the timeline of comfort. They know what the person looks like. They know what they're going to wear on the next date. They don't have a problem communicating with them, but they've actually never made that emotional bond or connection, and they haven't had real conversations yet. And they look in hindsight, I probably could have figured that out a lot earlier. I could have figured that out after a few dates, as opposed to after many dates. I had a girl who contacted me that she was dating this boy and she doesn't really like him, but she doesn't know why. And her mother was saying, no, you should go out more. You should go out more. And she said, like, what should I do? And I said, well, what bothers you about this boy? And she's like, I just don't like him. I just don't connect with him. I said, okay, how do you know? She said, well, nothing's come up. I said, well, have you tried? Have you tried showing him your true colors, who you really are? Have you sat on every single date feeling like stiff and tight, or have you allowed yourself to be comfortable within your own skin on the date? She's like, well, you don't do that too early. I said, okay, but it's not early anymore. It's not the first or second date, right? It's not early. So I said, well, don't you want to find out if he is or isn't for you? She goes, so what should I do? Just go on the next date and share with him some of my passions and the things that I've done and what interests me. And I said, go for it. Tell him why you love your summer job so much. I want to share the following with you, right? And that's like turning that switch on. She goes, and what's going to happen? I'm like, you're going to see if you felt good delivering it. And you're going to feel back whether or not it was well received or not. You're either going to connect or not connect. He might be like, oh, that's nice. And you're going to be like, all right, I'm out, or he might be like, wow, that's really interesting. So funny you tell me that. I also, had a very similar experience, or had something in my life that made me feel very similar to you. Can I share that with you? And then you start seeing how you feel around that person. And that opens up, I call it that's the Pesach Basuach, to like start getting to know the other person. So I do find that a lot of people you don't have to go on 10 dates to find out what you could have found out on a 5th date.
Can I add something that you're saying, Leora?
Please do. Absolutely.
So another thing that tends to happen is, and this is typically a girl thing. So a guy will go out, he is really trying to get to know her, and girls, it could be because of our more private, tzniustic nature, are not usually first to just open up. Like, first, I got to feel it out. I got to see if I'm comfortable. Do I like his personality? Do I like his look? I got to get comfortable on all fronts before I like open up. And something that's very classic that happens very often is the guy is like trying to get her open up, trying and trying to be patient and waiting. When is this girl going to open up? Because I like a lot of things about her, but I feel like she's just not letting me get to see her. And so they'll keep dating and he's being patient. And at some point, and every person has a different point, the guy's like, forget it. She doesn't want to open up. I'm not going to force her. I'm not going to beg her. I'm not going to, there's only so much I could chase her, and so I'll just walk away. And as soon as he starts to pull away, wait, I'm here to open up. I'm here to open up. And at that time, most guys are like, I'm sorry, I'm out of here. Like, I'm done. I've been so patient. Like, if you didn't want to open up till now, like I can't keep waiting anymore. It's too much. And some guys will say, okay, fine. Okay, let's see, let's try. And a lot of guys will say, can't have a relationship like this where I'm begging for you to just let me see who you are. And I'm waiting. And you just can't, like, I can't have a future like that. I can't have a marriage like that. And even if the girl would actually open up and be able to just move forward, sometimes it's too late. It's just too late.
You're right.
And that's very sad. Very, very sad.
So one of the things that I recommend to people is having an understanding of the difference between private and table talk personal, meaning it's not personal in a way that I can't tell anyone about that, but I wouldn't necessarily tell it to the, person next to me at the bus stop, right? So there's a difference between personal and private. So personal questions or personal information is so smart to share. Doesn't have to be on the first date again. Make sure you want to share some personal stuff and you don't feel like, it's just the person on the other side of the table who's a complete stranger. Why would I share any of that with him? But there's also this like really nice point where you sit there and you say some personal stuff like, oh yeah, I one time had when I one time had a surgery, I broke my arm and it was crazy. That's not so personal. A private surgery might be if somebody had back surgery and they were depressed and couldn't move for months and until they recovered. That's not private. It's not something they're going to share. But there's a big difference between a personal experience and a private experience. You don't go out with somebody and say to them on the third date because you're trying to connect with them, like, so why do you have a broken engagement? No. That's private. That is not a discussion unless you are worthy and you are the zocha, like to the key of my heart for me to open and share with you. And that's at a later stage. But a personal question would be like, or a personal statement to share with somebody might be something like, how was seminary? And somebody might be like, it's so interesting. It actually wasn't like what I thought it would be. And I had an okay year. That's personal. Is that private? It's not private. What was it like, when you had being raised with a sibling with special needs? That's a little bit more private, and I think that people have a hard time identifying, Rachel, that they're allowed to share experiences, say fun personal things that are lighter or not going to the deepest of depths. And people do have boundary problems with that. So how can you identify, or can you break down the difference between trying to connect with somebody on a more real level, on a more open level, on a more vulnerable level with proper gevulim, so that they don't say something that scares the other person away, which happens all the time, or anything else of the sort. So can you give some better guidelines for breaking down the difference?
I'm gonna give a couple guidelines, and then I really want to hear from Yitzchak in terms of some of his he's had a little time to process, and I like hearing his responses after he's
more like a little more time to get overwhelmed.
now that he's able to put up with Leora and I going on, and he's had his time to process, we want to hear from him. So I'm gonna quickly go through that a little bit. And it's very important to be able to understand personal and private, but also understand that if we don't move our conversations from, just less personal to more private and more open and deeper, we cannot move that relationship forward. And so very simply,
I'm talking about before that, because a lot of I'm talking the identification I want you to give over is the difference from going from table talk conversation, I went out with this nice person, they're nice, I'm not interested, we have nothing in common, to how to figure out if you actually do have things in common.
Okay. So, I'm going to quickly just go through what I call the 4 stages of dating, because I just think that it's a helpful thing to know. And then a couple of ways in which to get there. So 4 stages of dating are essentially, number 1, getting to know you. It's essentially just collecting information. Yes, you've done research on this person, but you don't know this person as a person. You just know them from just details that you've heard on paper. So, getting to know a little bit about them, their personality, what they enjoy, how they participate in conversation, their family, their job, their yeshiva, whatever it is that they're up to, just getting to know them. And that stage can last for different amounts of dates, depending on who you are. Typically it's about 1 to 4 dates, depending on who you are. Okay. And that's kind of a conversation you would have with any kind of stranger, coworker, so to speak, just getting to know a new person. Then we're moving into the next stage, which is developing a friendship. Can I develop a friendship with this person? Maybe I can't. Maybe I see everything on paper is great. And I get this a lot. He's such a great guy, but I don't like him. Okay. Something about him, I just don't like. I don't like his personality. I don't like his laugh. I don't like his look. I just don't like him. Right. So how do I move that relationship from the getting to know you into friendship, becoming more open, maybe throwing in some, some jokes, maybe allowing this person into my world where I share not private, but things that are a little bit more personal, right? Like you said, I broke an arm. These are some things that, I enjoy doing, hobbies, passions, interests, things that I'm involved with in my life, which are all, components of what make you who you are. Okay. And so can I build this friendship? And a major part of that is, can I enjoy this person's company? Because I can't, if I got a penny for every person who wants to continue dating because it looks good on paper. I mean, it's unbelievable. Papers do not get married. People get married. I never went to a wedding where I saw 2 papers getting married. People get married. People who like each other. We have to like each other. Okay. Life has many, many challenges. And if you're married, you know that. So we're not deciding if we can solve all of life's issues together, because you won't be able to. What we are deciding is, would I like to go through life and life's challenges with this person? Do I like this person enough that when things come up, I would want to work them out with you as opposed to somebody else? And personally, as somebody who had been engaged multiple times, this is not something that I recommend that you try at home. Do not be engaged multiple times for no reason, just to try this out. But since I've already done the legwork for you, okay, a litmus test for me when I was engaged, because I was engaged more times than I'd like to admit, was when hard things came up, because I found that when I was dating, hard things didn't really come up because everyone's on their best behavior. And it was really hard to get from a person how they would react in a hard situation. And so the litmus test for me when I was engaged, because whenever I was engaged, I know this sounds horrible. My husband will forgive me. I wasn't quite sure that I was going to marry that person. Since I'd already broken multiple engagements, I was engaged and it was kind of like, let's see how this goes. I didn't tell that to him. And I was certainly trying to make it work, but I found that the only time I could really get real with this person was during engagement, because that's when decisions came up. That's when plans came up. That's when different family background, challenges came up. And how can we work through this together? And each time I was engaged, I came up with situations that made me realize I cannot work with this person through life. When life challenges are really intense and really real, I cannot work with this person. And that led to the downfall of a couple of relationships. And I remember dating my husband and challenges came up because you come from different families. You're, spending a lot of money on a wedding, plans, details, different personality traits. And I remember watching and kind of observing myself from afar, how we were working through this together. And I remember saying, this is the man. This is the man that I can and will be able to work through life challenges with. And so, I think that is, like I said, don't try this at home, but I think it's really important to focus on that, because a lot of couples I deal with are so busy worrying about, well, I don't know if her mother if her mother does this in their home and I do this in my home, what's going to happen when I go to them for Shabbos? You're not going to be able to solve every nitty-gritty detail. Better focus on the big picture. Do I like this person enough to want to be able to move forward in any life challenges? Do I like how we work together as a team in order to deal with things that come up? So that would just be the friendship stage. Okay. So just getting
you start looking for that at the level 2.
Level 2 is the friendship. Do I like this person enough that I enjoy their company? And the only person who can tell you that is yourself, not your shadchan, not your dating coach, not your mother, father, sister, brother. No one is going to be able to tell you if you like this person enough. And usually the litmus test is, do I want to see this person one more time? Not 5 times, not if I see myself marrying them. I don't want to hear any of that. Would you like to see them one more time? Was the date good enough that I would want to go out one more time? That's the only question I expect people to answer. So we've gone through the getting to know you stage, building a friendship, which again can take between, date 2 till 10. Everyone's different. Some people move faster, some people move slower. It depends on hashkafically what you're used to in terms of those boundaries. So I leave that open. And then after we want to move forward from the friendship stage, because not everybody that we're friends with can we actually build a marriage with, right? And so that's really, really important. But friendship is the healthiest foundation of a healthy marriage, right? And so if we have a good friendship in this relationship, now let's see if we can move it to the next level. And the next level is emotional intimacy. Okay. And the way
you just bridged the two, not Rayim, but Rayim Ha'ahuvim.
Yes.
So I love the way
exactly.
that you just bridged level 2 and level 3.
Yes. Okay. And so friendship is not just something that I would share with a friend, because, we went from sharing with getting to know someone as on a coworker level or a stranger level to building a friendship with somebody. Okay. But someone who would move into category of like best friend or even more than best friend, that I would share something much more personal and much more vulnerable with in that emotional intimacy phase. And the way I define that is intimacy, which people, only think of physical intimacy, and that's not what I'm referring to. Emotional intimacy is exactly what it says. Into me, I will allow you to see. Into me, you see. If I can and create the capacity for if I can allow someone to see into me, my real heart, my real soul, my real interests, my real passions, my real struggles, my real challenges, if I can allow someone into that, then I can create really deep connection and I can really move this relationship forward. And it's usually in the third phase that if that phase goes well for both people are able to be open, vulnerable, share deeper parts of themselves, challenging parts, beautiful parts, ugly parts that I might not be proud of, but I trust you enough. I feel that you won't put me down. You won't make fun of me. I feel safe with you. I feel accepted. I don't feel judged. Then if I feel that I can move through that phase with you, typically mentally people will say, I can marry this person. They might not be ready to do it, but mentally they'll say, I can see myself marrying this person. Okay.
And that's where people say like, oh my gosh, they come home one day from like one day to go, I think this is it. It's like this eureka light bulb moment. Like, correct, we've got it, jackpot.
But they're not proposing tomorrow. They're not proposing tomorrow. Right. Correct. They're mentally saying, okay, I can go from, stranger, friendship, emotional intimacy. This is someone that allows me to feel safe with who I am. When I show my best parts and I show my less than best parts, I feel like this person can accept me. Then I move to the next phase. And again, this stage can take, between date, 5 till 15, 20. Again, it depends who you are and what your time frame comfort is. Then I move to the next phase, which is taking the leap. Okay. And that's an entire phase, because just because I know mentally and emotionally that I could actually create a good life with this person doesn't mean that I have the strength or the ability to actually take the leap, because I'm so scared, because I'm so worried, because I had a broken engagement, because my parents were divorced, because I never saw a healthy marriage, because what if they say no to me, all the fear or all the anxiety that comes up. And so it's called the leap because it literally is a leap. And the leap is, you're not going to know everything about this person. I know that doesn't sound, comfortable. Since we're talking about this, the getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, you will not know everything about this person. You will get married and you will find out things about this person that you didn't know. And you're going to find out things about this person that they didn't know about themselves. You know why? They were never married. And even if they were married, they were never married to you, right? So the leap is, I know enough to say I have a strong foundation of a healthy friendship. I have a strong foundation of a strong emotional, intimate connection, that I feel safe enough that I want to go through life with this person. Whatever comes my way, I will not solve it all. Whatever comes my way, are you willing to be vulnerable? Am I willing to be vulnerable? Are we both willing to take this leap together? Yes, then we can leap. And I'll also mention that if anybody gets stuck in any of those stages, meaning when I ask people about their dating patterns and I find that like, oh yeah, typically I got 1-2 dates and then they're over. Or, oh, I always get into a big parsha and like it always explodes, right? Or I've had multiple engagements. So you can see where people get stuck along the different stages. If you're not able to get through each stage, obviously you're not going to be able to get down the aisle. So working through what's getting people stuck in each phase is super, super important, because if people can never get to emotional intimacy, you're still not getting married. Even if you can have 1 million partios and 1 million broken engagements, but you're so riddled with fear, you're not going to get down the aisle. Even if guys like you and you like them, you got to work through what is getting you stuck there. So that is a little bit about, the 4 stages and moving things forward. And the way to transition from stage to stage is typically a conversation where it's clear that both of us want to move to the next level. And I'd like to share where I'm at and where I might want to see things going. And it's really important to have that conversation so that we can move things to the next level, because what often happens is I'm waiting for you to make the next move. You're waiting for me to make the next move, and we're ping-ponging and no one's going anywhere. So if one side, it's always helpful if it's the guy, because the guy is kind of waiting for the girl. And I always tell the guy, you are the guy. So it is important for you to try to make that next move as like the man of the relationship, right? If you want to be the man of the relationship, and take that next leadership role. But the girl is going to have to send vibes that she is ready for that, right? Whether or not it's a certain eye contact, or whether or not it's a certain openness or a comfort or a body language that shows that she's ready for the next phase, that is typically a conversation that is able to transition us from stage to stage.
This is a fascinating framework. I like it very much. For me personally, it very much resonates, and I feel like without hearing it from you, as I was listening to you, my dating relationship, and eventually getting married definitely went through all of these stages. I have a lot of questions, and I wanted to know if I could sort of ask both of you, not as a yes or no, but if you could try to give me relatively short responses, because I really want to ask a few technical questions. I guess I'm thinking to myself, I'm imagining if I was dating again and people out there who are dating, they just wanted to get a few very kind of grounded, I don't know if it's tactical advice of how to navigate a few different situations. So the first thing I wanted to ask to both of you is, and just to sort of reveal, I don't know if I'm going to call it a bias, but I'm definitely in the crusade of normalizing conversations about emotions for men, because I find that there's a lot of blockages for all kinds of reasons, or just struggles being able to be emotional, emoting, sharing emotions. So one question I have for you is, it's one thing to describe these 4 stages in time of peace, right? But the way we started today's episode is we're talking about now in times of war, and things become wacky and people are dysregulated, and sometimes people are not even aware to what degree they're dysregulated until they are confronted with a random situation, and all of a sudden, the trigger sets them off, and emotion just starts oozing out of them. So I'm gonna, again, I'm sort of making it like light, because I know we're talking about a very heavy topic. So I'll give you an example, right? So I'm a guy, I'm dating. I come to talk to you, and I tell you, I'm very nervous. I'm gonna go on this first date or second date, and I'm nervous. I might start crying while we're sitting on the date. Do you think I should not go on this date now because it's just inappropriate, or I'm misplacing my emotions essentially on a stranger? Um, or it's a sign I'm just not ready right now to be on the date. I just need to take time, to be with my feelings. And when I'm more collected, because I'm essentially introducing stage 3 of your, formulation at stage 1. And so, how would you advise me in terms of navigating something like that?
Leora, you want to go? You want me to take it?
You can go first. I'll go after you.
So first of all, if we're so emotional to the extent that we cannot functionally show up at work, if we can't get ourselves out of bed, if we cannot go through our day-to-day basic living skills as a functional, member of society, yes, I do recommend that you should not be dating, and you should be taking a little time to collect yourself and get back to yourself. And if there is a mental health concern or issue, you should certainly be taking care of that first before you're dating. With that said, if we're going to work, if we're going about our functional daily living, and we find ourselves at times, crying, whether or not when we're davening, or whether or not because we heard something tragic, or we saw something that was just triggering, I think that is universal right now for everyone. And I certainly wouldn't recommend that you continue to date, but I would recommend that we bring this up. And there is a possibility that we can actually fast track connection. During COVID, a lot of shidduchim happened, a lot, because people realized what was really important. People are sick, people are dying, everything's shut down. Like, what's really important? Family, homes, connection, the future, right? And I'm really hoping, really hoping and davening that will happen this time as well, where, when something really intense and really real happens, obviously it's not ideal. We don't ask for that. But when it happens, can we really focus on what's real and what's really important? And I would say, call out the elephant in the room. Just call it out. Something that comes up a lot for a lot of people is, I don't know how to say that, but how do I bring that up? And that's so uncomfortable. And how do I say that and do that? I just say it? Yes, you just say it, right? So here's one method that I use for uncomfortable conversations. Leora, would you like to have an uncomfortable, awkward conversation?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, this is a little bit uncomfortable and a little bit awkward, but I think it's really important to bring up. I'm just feeling very emotional right now about Eretz Yisrael. And I find myself davening and just crying, or I find myself seeing a video and just not being able to compose myself, or just spacing out at work because I'm just so distracted with, my family, my friends, who's safe, what's going to be, all of that. What is that like for you? Okay, so that kind of openness, we're like, this is awkward. It's uncomfortable. Would you like to have a conversation of being uncomfortable? Let's get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Would you be able to do that with me? And so what we've done is we've invited another person into the discomfort, into the awkward. And now that we've kind of gotten that elephant out of the room, we can actually have an open conversation. And so there is an ability to fast track the connection. I don't want to skip the stages of friendship, because I do think that that's important. So we do need to make sure that even if we jump into connection and the deep pain that we're feeling and what this brings out in us, in terms of what's going on today, we still need to make sure that there is an opportunity for us to connect as friends. And something else that's really important to mention is, even though our dates, may not be as light or as happy as they used to be, or although they really can be, because we're building homes here, right? Look at the soldiers, they're dancing and singing. They know Am Yisrael Chai, that is what's important. So I want to make sure that we don't just connect on a morbid level and just kind of misery loves company. And you're sad and depressed and I'm sad and depressed. Wow, we have so much in common. Let's just get married. We need to make sure that we are going back and able to actually be friends, that we can have fun together. We can laugh together. We can enjoy smiling together. We don't want to attract somebody who is just in a heavy, depressed state of despair. That is not going to lead us into a healthy relationship. So we want to make sure that we do that. But in short, I would certainly tell someone to go out and try to focus on just bringing up what they're feeling as opposed to just hiding it.
Okay, so I'm going to answer. Thank you, Rachel. I'm gonna expand a little bit. First thing I was going to say is that emotional regulation is of utmost importance, and for sure it makes sense what you're saying, that somebody should not go out if they're not in a emotionally balanced state of mind. But once they are, to answer the question about, let's say somebody's in a later stage of dating, right? Not date 1, 2, or 3, but let's say they're transitioning from that friendship into that emotional intimacy. A lot of men feel in general that they can't share their emotions, they can't share their feelings. I think that we have seen more men crying on these videos and on these social medias, and then what the families are going through. That seeing men crying is not something that is looked upon as a problem. So men out there should know that crying does not mean that you're a loser. Women don't look at you as crying turns you into somebody that is just, not a man. It's not true. So much so that actually when we go through history, it's actually fascinating. I took a course by Dr. Ronanovich years ago. As an educator in the school, she gave a course on anti-bullying. And she said what's very interesting is that when children who are young, when they are bullied, you could have a second grader who comes over. I don't remember if she said second grader, but we could use a second, third, fourth, fifth grader, any of them for an example. And if somebody goes over to the girl and will hit her really hard and throw her on the ground, right? She's going to cry, because that's the development. It's a developmental stage of the developmental response that's appropriate, for what occurred to her. If a boy the same thing happens to him. He goes to his teacher and he goes, he this, he that. It's sort of like there's this undertone, like man up, deal with it, handle it, right? But if you want to do a neurological study, they actually emotionally are both going through the same exact thing, right? So why do we let the girl cry and we don't let the man cry? Now you're dealing with this as adults, okay? And the answer is that a man who cries doesn't mean that he's not a man. So I just want to reassure the men out there. Actually, I think one of the most attractive features for many women who are looking for healthy men, a lot of them are looking for somebody that's emotionally in tuned and aware and has social skills, and has a popularity amongst the people that they're close with because of their goodness and their kindness and their abilities. So I would like to add that. The third thing I want to say is regarding this fast track connection, we do have to be careful about it. It is true that during COVID, a lot of people were seeking a partner, a companion. We have a lot of people who are able to look past what's not important and look for the most important things. But we also had people that rushed into relationships. I've definitely gotten quite a number of phone calls of divorcees from COVID who rushed into the relationship. So I'd like to separate the differences between COVID versus what everyone's going through now with this war. I remember years ago, there was a camp that they had a funny, cute name for it. It was for children with special needs. And you had like a lot of counselors that were so good, the guy counselors and the girl counselors. And everyone was just in this environment of love, peace, and happiness, harmony, selflessness, So you have a lot of shidduch that happen, which is a good thing as long as people took the time to get to know each other for real, with the right amount of time and outside of that environment, because that environment was not going to be their marriage. It wasn't going to be their day-to-day living. It was impractical. It was very lofty, sweet, and holy, and very enjoyable. But that wasn't going to be the way they're really going to be living. When people go out to eat, on dates and this and that, like sometimes I remind them, so you're not going out to eat every time you have supper. Like you will be broke. So it's sort of like eventually you go from this like dating from like, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? What can we do? And eventually it doesn't matter what we do. We just want to be with each other. It doesn't matter if we're sitting in your parents' living room with your brothers and sisters playing, I don't know, code names with us because we're just happy to. It's not about the spending money and being out there. But there is a reality that we have to understand, that there are certain things that can bring us together, and we want to utilize that power correctly. During COVID, one of the biggest hardships that I have identified from broken engagements or broken marriages who are now seeking, looking for their spouse, is that they didn't see these individuals in social environments. They didn't see them interact with the waiter, with the person who held the door for them. There was no outside world. So they only got to know them, me and you and me, and barely anybody else. So they didn't get to see the whole entire them. Now, with this war, you're seeing people for real. You're seeing a lot of vulnerable exposure. I mean, it is really there. People are going on dates. They're not ignoring that their insides are upside down. They're not ignoring the fact that they're not like in their house today and what can we do and what's our routine and I feel so trapped and and if somebody passed away, obviously that was emotional, but you just had a lot of people like going about their new lives on Zoom without social interaction during COVID. And during this wartime, we're seeing a lot about people. And I think that the way to balance it, because we said like about the emotional regulation and what's happening, there are going to be days that are better, and there are going to be days or there have been days that were worse, Mirz Hashem, we should not have any days that are worse or that are hard. But I think that, the psukim are our gold. It says, Gila Rina Ditza V'chedva, Ahava V'achva V'shalom V'reis. There are two parts to a relationship. And when you're dating somebody, you have to exercise both parts of the relationship. Gila Rina Ditza V'chedva, excitement. Let's go to Dave and Buster's and let's go out to eat and let's have fun and let's do an escape room together. And Ahava Achva Shalom V'reis. Can I talk to you about how I'm feeling? Can I let you know what my inner world is like? and men and women alike are both able to practice both sides of the relationship so that they can ensure that we don't have repeated history of the past where people were focused more on one component without having the connection, in the right exact way. And that we could, and there are those that did, but there are also those that didn't. So we validate both. And that this time moving forward, that the men should know that, yes, you were not wired like women. I never saw a man playing in first or second grade. Can we play house? I want to be the daddy who wakes up in the middle of the night helping the mommy give the baby a bottle and change the diaper and take the garbage out and go to work. And I've never, ever, ever seen that. And all you men who see your 3-year-old son pushing a baby stroller, calm down. They like their trucks also. It's okay. You don't have to be the father who goes, take that carriage away from my son right now. Like we just I don't know. I'm sure no one knows what I'm talking about here. But the bottom line is that we are programmed to talk more, to cry more, to play mommy more, to dress up as a Kala more. It's spoken to us about marriage left and right, every stage of life. Keep going. You want to know what it's like in high school? All good. So when you get married in Mir Hashem, right? Again, the boys, it's not part of it as much as it is with the girls. Is it imbalanced? You darn tootin'. Okay, so we put that on the table. Now that we know that, men, we know that you have feelings. We are married to men. We understand that you have feelings and you should know that they are normal. And your wife will love your feelings and she will love your inner world. And she will feel very special when she becomes the person that you chose to let in, to unlock, to get inside to your heart. And that she will be the safe person for you with those inner feelings. That maybe you have deep friendships, maybe you don't. It doesn't mean you don't have feelings. We know that you do. And you should feel good and confident, and being emotional is not a sign of weakness.
I'm going to push an even harder question. Maybe you're going to tell me it's too sophisticated and it won't occur to people in their early 20s. I'm dating. Maybe I'm somewhere hovering between friendship and maybe heading towards emotional intimacy. Here we are. We're in the middle of the war. I'm experiencing stuff. And by the way, I want to just sort of quickly inject. I think because you remember two extremes. If somebody's like just emotionally dysregulated, they can't function normally, or then somebody who's like totally. Well, I want to talk about the gray scenario because that's really where most people are going to be, and that is, you're right. I did go to work and I did perform and I went to shul and I davened. It's at the end of the day when I now need some release, and the release I'm having is I'm going on a date, and so finally I might, in some inappropriate way, or tell myself, okay, here's finally where I could sort of let my guard down because I'm not interested in telling my boss or my coworker. It just might be a totally inappropriate setting to discuss politics, whatever it may be. But the date, hey, right, that's the environment that right now in my world, it could be the place. So the question I have is, we're dating. I think it's going well, but now I'm wondering if, and we kind of touched on it earlier, but I really wanted you to expound on, are the things really moving? Because I'm right now in distress, she's in distress, and we are connecting around that versus there really is a good solid foundation underneath us, and I don't have to worry that I'm really sort of marching forward deeper into this relationship because of the current circumstances, emotional upheaval or her emotional upheaval. Like Howard, right? You're the one, so to speak, on the front lines of dealing with them. I only get them after the chuppah. So you flagging for, hey, you two need to be careful. I'm concerned that the relationship is getting deeper for the wrong reasons, meaning because you're both right now are getting this emotional comfort out of this relationship rather than building a proper foundation of enough commonalities, enough, common vision for what you want out of the relationship. How are you flagging for these things?
I think there's like two short answers, which are really, really short. And one of them is that it's a springboard to help you get to the other real stuff. That's number one. There's only so much you can connect on that level of how much we have in common about how we feel about Eretz Yisrael. Everybody could date everybody right now, if that's the case, because everyone is going through a lot of these feelings. It should be used only as a springboard to deeper connection, because it's a very safe personal feeling. It's not very private. And number two is that I don't believe that you have to run towards skipping over each of the levels and each of the dating stages. It's very important to go through each and every single one. Even if it might accelerate level 2 to go straight to level 3 of emotional intimacy, be careful. Some of your stages might be shorter, but the last thing is, I think we're seeing now more than ever that we're really very similar. We're all Jewish. They don't care if you have a yarmulke on your head. If you don't, they don't care. Well, a Jew is a Jew is a Jew. That's the end of it. We have more in common with each other than we even realize. We really do. We might be open to more ideas that we wouldn't have been open to, because we needed this to shake us up and to realize how much we have in common.
Right, but that's exactly, sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's exactly what I just want to push it further. Maybe, Rachel, you could pick up on the answer. Is I hear what you're saying, Leora, but the issue is, what if I am using exactly that information, not intentionally, not because I know I have some bad reason for doing it, just it could be very subconscious, just, sort of the emotions of carrying a person, especially a young person, especially a guy who, if he was sitting learning and trained to be cerebral, and all of a sudden is getting hit with emotional waves. So yeah, I'm sitting with a girl on a date, and I'm like, you know what, right? Like, world's coming to an end anyway, and I'm saying, just people could catastrophize and experience certain things that they wouldn't otherwise when it's not time of war. And all of a sudden, it's, yeah, I think she's good enough. Yeah, I think he's good enough. So I'm just wondering, what are you doing on the front lines? Because you're there with them. I could share with you what I would be doing if I was a shadchan, but I'm not. I can only tell you what they talk about after the fact that they wish were in the picture when they were on those stages. But I'm very curious to understand, right? You're listening to them, and how are you flagging for, wait a second, I'm picking up here, like I said, misplaced emotion, good intention, but not properly applied. How are you flagging for any of that sort of stuff?
Okay, so I'm gonna jump in here and say that I think the benefit of what we're going through right now is an ability to fast track getting past the superficial, getting into the real. The real doesn't mean that you're necessarily for me. The real just means that, what I find typically is that we think we have two people going on a date, but that's not what I see. What I see is that every time I have a guy who went on a date and didn't work out, he puts up a brick to protect himself. And every time she went on a date and didn't work out, she puts up another brick to protect herself, because nobody wants to get hurt. And I see people walking around with fortresses to protect themselves. And it takes so many dates as we get older, because we've all been hurt, we've all been rejected, and it's painful for all of us. I see them going on dates with these fortresses, and no one could really get to know anyone, because everyone's trying to protect themselves. And protecting yourself is helpful in terms of not getting hurt in the future. The problem with that is that we don't allow anybody in. And I think the benefit of what we're going through right now as Klal Yisrael is an ability to break down those barriers and break down those walls, because I could just be real with you. You could just be real with me. It's, inherently a safe space where we can be open and share. That doesn't mean that you're for me. It doesn't mean that I'm for you, but I think that it will fast track our dating to get to the real conversations sooner. And that will be helpful. One of the things that I use as a litmus test is, what are my deal breakers? Right? What are my needs and wants in a relationship? That's something that I established with somebody very, very early on. We really have to be focused on making sure that our core needs are being met. If our wants are met and our needs are not being met, this relationship will not be sustainable long-term. And so we really have to focus on making sure that those needs are being met. And we're going to need to focus on that right away. So I can get to know this person deeper and faster, but we still might not have goals and values that match up. We still might not have hashkafos that match up. We still might not have emotional, level of connection that will match up. But I will get to
Or
know
you could have connection. You could have connection, but it would never work.
Right. Because other things are not in alignment, right? And that's fine. But at least I'll get to know this person deeper and faster. We'll be more real with each other, because I think people are having less patience for all the small superficial things. And I think that this has allowed us to go deeper faster. So Yitzchak, I think it's important that we make that very clear. We're not just pushing anyone to marry anybody. I mean, I don't push anyone to anything, but we're not encouraging anyone to just marry anyone because I'm a Jew and you're a Jew. That's not the point. I think that this just has the ability for us to get real sooner, get rid of the superficiality, break down those barriers that kind of protect us and entrap us, and get real with the actual components of who are we and can we actually connect in the things in the areas that we really need. Because it is important to be selfish with what my needs are. Because if I'm not selfish in dating, and I say this very often, I cannot be a good giver. I need to make sure my needs are being met in order to give. I think I will kind of end with that. This is unprecedented times. And I think that people are digging deep within themselves. And when we dig deep, we often find the best parts of ourselves come out. And when the best parts of us come out and we're able to work on ourselves, grow, develop, connect, and be open, then great things can come of it. And I really, really daven and hope that from this matzah that we're in, really spectacular, beautiful Batei Nemanim could be built from these times.
Amen.
Yeah. Do you want to add any parting words? You're good?
I really think Rachel made it full circle. I think
amazing.
she went from the understanding from the beginning about what we're going through, the emotions of what we're going through, how to utilize it to keep that switch on, allowing the vulnerability, being able to get to levels of understanding earlier on, being real with oneself, and being able to develop and grow in multiple ways to help build those, Batei Nemanim that you just discussed. I think, Rachel, you really just brought it full circle.
Yeah, and I just wanted to
also it should be a schos for all of us to try and heal the pain of Klal Yisrael, to be able to rebuild.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I also just want to personally thank you for being on this front lines. These are such important stages, the foundational stage of people's lives going into building families, which is one of the preeminent values of the Jewish people. So it's very special that you're on those front lines helping guide people, especially